This is a good content idea, though. 20 Redditors versus 1 league coach, but I can see Raz. Is that Raz?
Cancel. Why would we just feel?
Lane swaps are good for league. Riot should balance around pros. Koshimi is bad for league. Should we start here? Feats of strength. Faker never played. If Faker never played league, Clear Love would be the GOAT. Gary Newman should be viable in pro play. Bro, who the f said that? LTA merger with Brazil is great for NA. Oh, I want to listen to that. Fearless draft will expose pro players' weakness. I don't think that's a too crazy take. Yawn debate spawn. Okay. Riot shouldn't balance around pros. I don't think they do balance around pros. Let's start here.
I agree.
But
they balance the game well.
But yeah, so we're in agreement.
Co-streaming is inherently bad for League of Legends.
They do balance around pros? What are you on about? There's no way. They maybe balance a tiny bit. Wait, Olympics messaged me. What's up? He says, let's play in 20 minutes. I think they balance around pro play, but they don't balance around pro players. Does that make sense? So like, okay, how does this make sense? Okay, Mark, you're so stupid. How does this argument make sense? So, for example, if pro play has lane swap, then they will fix it. But if okay, here's a good example. Okay, let me work this out. So, Cassante, let's start with Cassante and Azir. Cassante, Azir, and Ryze. These are 3 champions that are sometimes in pro play metas extremely OP, but are fucking weak in solo queue. So, these are champions that they have to balance around making sure, because if you okay, how do I describe? Let me get my pen out. Not the case for Ryze anymore, but it's same. You know what I mean? You know, it's same. It has to get updated. So it's like an angle of overcorrection. Okay, so here and here, yeah. Champion is OP in pro play. Champion is useless in pro play. If you overcorrect a champ from being useless in pro play to OP in pro play, this can also mean that it's either OP in solo queue or it's... He's not calling me, chat. Oh yeah, he is calling me. Wait 1 sec. Okay, so Azir can be broken in pro play, but useless. Azir, Ryze, and Cassante can be broken in pro play, but useless in solo queue. So they have to balance the champion so that it is effective in pro play, but also is not useless in solo queue because the champ dies out. And then the flip side of that overcorrection is Skarner, right? Skarner is OP in solo queue and OP in pro play. So the overlap is easier. So you're right, they do balance around pro play. Yeah, that's true. All right. What is this?
Legends.
I feel like co-streaming actually brings in a lot more viewers as opposed to just the general League of Legends broadcast. I mean, don't get me wrong, I watch League with my dad, and when we watch, we go ahead and watch the normal broadcast because it's a lot easier for him to digest, you know, like Captain Flowers, Azael, you know, all those people. It's really easy for them to actually, like, explain the game and everything. But when I watch it myself, it's, I love watching Dom. I feel like he breaks down the game in a lot more
hey, Dom's a good co-streamer.
Analytical of a view, and if I were not to watch it with my dad, I would way more rather watch it with Dom.
Yeah, so back in my day, if you would rather watch it with Dom, then there was an onus on Riot Games to go offer Dom a salary to make him be on the main broadcast, and then that makes the main broadcast better. They did it with... If you would rather watch it with Dom, then there was an onus on Riot Games to go offer Dom a salary to make him be on the main broadcast, and then that makes the main broadcast better. They did it with people like Crepo, Deficio, Caedrel originally.
Yeah, what he's basically saying, TLDR, is if community like person, then person come on broadcast and we pay person. True?
Now there's a better attractive option for Dom to not be on the main broadcast. It actually hurts the main broadcast and only 4,000 people watch Dom. So
also true. Well, I don't know if only 4,000 people watch Dom. Okay, so basically what he's saying is there is... Okay, so the reason he's kind of wrong is because I think, like, names... How do I put this into words? It's like the Fishos and Crepos and Caedrels or whatever the fuck. Names have ranges, and ranges are like... Doesn't it hurt the main broadcast? Like, you can have someone who's really popular on the broadcast, right? You can have someone who's really popular on the broadcast, you know? And you can have someone who's not very popular on the broadcast. And there's a range to how much influence that person has based on whether they're on the broadcast or not, right? If Captain Flowers is casting a game, oh my god, I'm tuning in. But if someone else is casting the game, maybe I'm not too interested. So the influencer with exposure has more interest from people, but also costs more money, okay? So you have the ranges, yeah? I'm just giving you an outline by what he's basically saying, breakdown. You have ranges of people who will tune in for that person. You have ranges of how much they will cost to be on the broadcast, right?
Our main broadcast, it actually hurts the main broadcast. Now there's a better attractive option for Dom to not be on the main broadcast. It actually hurts the main broadcast, and only 4,000 people watch Dom.
That's kind of, yeah, okay, so what he's basically saying now is instead of being a caster on the broadcast, I can just go and co-stream and make more money. Which applies to some people, you know? You can't just say, because some casters earn 100,000, some casters earn 50,000, some casters earn 200,000, some 300,000, you know, like there's ranges, and there has been for many years, you know. I don't know what the ranges are now because like things are cut, things are changing, but the amount of money you earn on a co-stream, you can't just stop casting and co-stream, you know, and boom, you're earning more money. It doesn't work like that. You can't just copy paste. It doesn't. It's two different entities, you know. Like I will tell you from my experience, brand numbers on social media platforms do not translate to Twitch. You can have 200,000 followers on Twitter and you can tweet I am live. I guarantee you 50 people will see that link and rock up. Things do not transition. It just doesn't happen. You can't just be popular on a stream of like the LEC or have a lot of Twitter followers or Instagram followers and then just be a streamer. It just doesn't work. I feel like to me what I've learned over the last few years is Twitch is such an enigma that no matter how popular you are, you could be like an S-tier celebrity. You can boot up Twitch, you'll get like 2K viewers. It just doesn't work like that. It's like a whole nother ball game.
So I would say that that isn't good for League of Legends.
But if we're talking about the 4,000 people that watch Dom, what about like the 50, 60, 70,000 people that watch Caedrel? What about like the 100,000 people that watch a buy? Yeah. I feel like it brings in so many more people.
So I think a buy is a little bit different because it's actually a different language broadcast when we're talking about English-speaking League of Legends. Yeah. So I'm going to park that situation because I actually don't think you can transfer those people. But my gut feeling is that the 100,000 people that watch Caedrel used to watch the main broadcast and now don't watch the main broadcast, which is terrible for sponsorship. All Caedrel does is...
What? I didn't get it. What did he say? Sorry?
A little bit different because it's actually a different...
I feel like there's like okay, so everything here feels very... Chad, don't spam question mark or wrong or anything like this. I feel like for me, the biggest argument is everything here sounds very black and white. It's like watch main broadcast, watch co-streamer. But there's a lot of gray area, you know? And that gray area comes from personality. And that personality makes it so you have an added extra to watching a product that might be becoming quite boring. If I'm a viewer and I have to watch SK versus Rogue, and Caedrel's, I'll use myself as an example, right? And Caedrel's casting, maybe that's fun for me. Cool, Caedrel's casting. But Caedrel is very limited on what he can say, how he can act, how interactive he can be, how entertaining he can be, whatever it is. He's casting, sure, but he's on a professional broadcast. But Caedrel at home, watching SK vs Rogue, he can talk to chat. Maybe we can enjoy it. Maybe we can make some like funny jokes. Maybe we can do this or whatever. Okay, chat, I'm not going to stop using myself. I'll say Dom. I will dominate. I'm going to use Dom. You guys are really annoying. So I will dominate at home versus I will dominate on a broadcast. He's very like, you know, as much as there's probably regulations as to what you can and can't say about teams, I don't think Dom's going to go out of his way to say, this fucking... Okay, he does do this sometimes, okay? This fucking team's terrible, they should kick everyone, la 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 la. He's not going to say that on a main broadcast, is he? He's not going to go on a main broadcast and say that. Maybe he would, because he's dumb. Maybe I'm using a bad example here. But he's not going to go on a main... It's a lot more personable to watch someone watch something. It's kind of like... I think the biggest thing for me is... and maybe if Spawn wants to talk about this one day, I'm down to talk about it, is esports had a big boon and everything was going great and viewership was great. But the game interest slowly peaked and was on a downwards trend. But while this was happening and viewership was slowly, like it already peaked and it was starting to go down, React content started to boon on YouTube. I watched this, I reacted to that. On YouTube, things were going crazy. React content absolutely skyrocketing throughout the 2017, 2018, 2019 eras. People would react to everything, even 2020 COVID era. People react to this, react to that, react to this, react to that, react to this, react to that. And people would watch things that people watch on YouTube more than watching the video itself. And this just became like a new generation of generating viewers. This was just like the new generation. People would watch people react to things instead of watching it themselves. And you had two aspects of the influencer. You had influencer who had a fan base, and you had influencer who was watching a video or reacting video that people would be interested in. So you have like the handshake, right? So similar to like league co-streaming. You have the game itself that people want to watch, and the influencer who has like a fan base or whatever. But he's reacting to this, so it's like a win-win for people in their minds, okay? So React content is booning, League esports viewership is peaking and like on a downwards trend. Hands come together, next boom comes in, right? So I think that the generation being built up over the last few years before co-streaming came in of React content and esports hitting like a brick wall, I feel like those two things coming together made it so fans felt they could watch their games or their favorite games and keep up to date with it all and still be invested in the whole product while also being entertained because people are reacting to it and they can be a lot more like personable, right? So I think co-streaming is unique in a way where if you compare it to normal sports, it just doesn't work like that. It doesn't. Maybe you someday in the future will watch Cristiano Ronaldo watch Real Madrid versus Barcelona. Maybe that becomes a thing. I don't know. But that whole model needs to change then, because League started as a free-to-watch game. The reason it's different, and I'll say this from a business side, is League of Legends has game, yeah? Game shows skins, skins get bought, yeah? And they can sell ads. Whereas NBA, I imagine, is much different. NBA, not free, have to pay $1 per month. Pay $1 per month and ads. So you have one model that is relying on exposure, and one model it is relying on people signing up monthly. As much as it's still exposure, it's a different form of revenue through exposure. This revenue through exposure is just numbers. This revenue through exposure is like getting people to pay, right? If you have 100 people, maybe only 20 people want to pay, and 80 people are like, no, I want that shit for free. Also, esports fans are, bro, they won't pay for things. It's just how it goes. Online people, when it comes to watching games, you won't pay for things, you know? People even get mad in streams when an ad plays. That's just life, you know? Everything comes at you free on the internet. YouTube, Twitch, everything, ad block, everything. Everything comes at you free. So it's a very tough market. If you opened up League of Legends in 2015 or whatever and said, hey guys, we're doing this model where you have to be subscription based and you have to pay $5 a month to watch League esports, I don't know how many people would stick around. But if that worked, we would never have this problem, right? We would never have this problem of like people having issues with paying this or paying that or paying these salaries or financial problems, whatever it is. I don't know. But because that hasn't happened, and because League of Legends game make money from selling sponsors and people buying skins, then only thing that numbers is viewership. That's it. That's all that matters. Eyes. Eyes is all that matters. Eyeballs. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. Nothing else. Literally nothing. They don't have to convert anything. All they have to do is add up numbers of co-streamers and get eyes on their skins. That's basically how the shit works, right? So when co-streamers come in and League viewership's on a decline, or a steady decline, and co-streamers can come in with extra audiences or to reignite the industry, to boom the league when it's team owners or people being more interesting, then both of these things win, right? The only caveat, and I imagine the only caveat is it is much harder to go to sponsors being like, hey sponsor, I'm Riot Games. I have 1 million viewers across all my channels, including co-streamers. I want you to pay me X amount of money. Versus, hey sponsors, I have 800,000 viewers, and all of them are on my channel. Look at these stats. This is me right there. That's me. That's my broadcast. You want a sponsor? This is much easier than this. That for sure is true. But then it's finding a way that co-streaming is very new the last few years, that it hasn't fully been figured out. Finding a way to bridge that gap is the only problem that co-streaming has right now, in my opinion. That's the only bridge that's missing. How can we, as a broadcast, benefit from having co-streamers' eyes and everyone can be happy together on a financial level instead of just collectively adding up numbers and selling these artificial ideas of like, well, what's going to happen if there's a ad break, and someone fucking leaves their chair and goes to the toilet and puts music on? We have a problem, right? Whereas if you have a main broadcast, that's not going to happen because you're just going to have the volume on. And as much as the viewer might stand up and go to the toilet, at least the co-streamer hasn't fucking tabbed out. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's the way I see co-streaming at least. I feel like this bridge is missing. But the way the world has worked and the way regular sports models worked, we have to go in a different path because of how revenue is like generated from people. What I'm surprised by, with all this in mind, is I don't understand why Riot hasn't created more content more content creator based subscription or revenue models, or whatever, right? Why isn't there any buy like icon in the client? Why isn't there like fucking, I don't know, who's your favorite streamer chat in League of Legends? Spearshot. Why can't Spearshot have like a Pantheon emote? Why can't fucking NattyNat have a Rengar emote? Why can't all these like League creators have like some emote or icon or some small thing that they can have with their community? Takes like 10 minutes maybe, get it in the client, give them a code or something or whatever it is, boom, done. Maybe that's a one-way co-streaming could work. I don't know. Maybe that's one way you could get more fans or more viewers from streamers to enable it so content creators can get money from the game, but also Riot can make money from them. If I'm Riot, hey Spearshot, or hey fucking whatever, if I give you 20% of this revenue on this skin and I use your stream to grow it, or this fucking icon, why don't we do that? Because that's what Fortnite did. And I think the Fortnite way kind of works if you're only looking at revenue and like generating money. That's it. That's the only way you're looking at it if you want to generate money. Maybe not skins. Skins too far. Icon, emote, whatever it is. LS at its prime. Why can't we make like an LS emote with fucking Morello popping up or whatever? Why can't we make a Dom emote where he's like fucking screaming or some shit? It's just random shit, you know? Random shit. Random ideas. Why can't we make a no way for you icon? I don't know, something like that. This is what I don't understand. Why is there not more content creator based like ways to like generate money through the client rather than through that? That's just my thing. Anyway, I've done a lot of yapping. Hopefully I made sense in some of the shit. Maybe I've come up with a lot of things he's going to say, because I've just like fucking ranted my whole idea about how co-streaming works.
Language broadcast when we're talking about English-speaking League of Legends. Yeah. So I'm going to park that situation because I actually don't think you can transfer those people. But my gut feeling is that the 100,000 people that watch Caedrel used to watch the main broadcast and now don't watch the main broadcast, which is terrible for sponsorship. All Caedrel does is screech over every single ad roll being played. Like, I don't even know how Riot is.
That is complete cap. I actually go out of my way on purpose to make sure the ads are watched, and I even like joke around them. Red Bull gives you wings, or I go during the fucking secret lab thing. I intentionally do that. The fuck, bro? I don't just screech over ads. Sure, I'll tune out of a game maybe, but then sometimes when I did the LCS co-streams and I watched a game like C9 versus TL, and the game was fucking done, and then it was fucking, I don't know, Immortals versus fucking some random team, I would just turn off the stream and host them. That's it. Or yeah, chicken at every checkpoint, is he switching lanes? You know, sometimes I like to interact with the ads. I try and go, obviously I don't have to do this, but I'm not gonna be a complete fucking dickhead and just fucking scream over that shit, am I?
This shit anymore, and he used to be on the broadcast and left the broadcast because co-streaming was more popular. You're literally proving my point that we are missing the S-tier talent off the Riot Game broadcast because it's better to be the co-streamer at the moment.
But let's go back to Ibai for a second.
I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I said that like openly. Like, I juggled co-streaming and casting for like 3 years, and then co-streaming took off, so I went with co-streaming because I don't think like. I think I'll make more money co-streaming, and Riot doesn't want to pay more money to keep me, right? So that's just gonna how it goes. Just how it goes.
Yeah.
Do you think Riot Games would actually make a non-English broadcast? I mean, look at the LPL. They just completely nuked the English broadcast right there. So do you think having another language, even like more maybe Spanish, you know, more like Portuguese, other like languages would be better?
I mean, I think that in other sports, as the broadcasts become official, that's what they do, and they're able to bring in more money for the product from those audiences. So I would say in the ideal world, yes, Ibai would eventually be on an official broadcast.
But we've seen League go for like 10 plus years already. They haven't done it.
Yeah,
so
and be completely mismanaged. Again, once again, I love everyone's argument about League of Legends is we haven't ever been able to solve this issue, so we should just stop trying to solve the issue. Like, that's just a pathetic way to approach issues.
Well, the whole like other broadcasting is also like a whole different world. Like, I don't know how the Spanish broadcast is doing, but if Ibai is streaming at the same time as the Spanish broadcast, then the Spanish broadcast is obviously gonna fucking take a hit, right? That's just the way it is. But I'm sure Ibai goes out of his way to like work with the Spanish broadcast to watch it and like interact with it. So it's still like a joining together. It's just like I said, the bridge of how to monetize is just not as easy. Oh my God.
I don't know. I thought there would be more people.
Chat, I've already yapped for about 20 minutes straight. I'm not gonna pause at every take.
So you've been talking a lot about how it's diminishing quality on return and stuff like that. How is it that other esports, Valorant, Call of Duty, Rocket League, all these other profitable esports have these big co-streamers and they're actually...
I'll tell you why quickly as well. You know that thing that I talked to you about React content? Esports viewership went like this, yeah? COVID. That's how esports viewership went, from my perspective, from the data I saw. Viewership was going up, it was declining. COVID happened, viewership went up, it was declining again. Co-streaming comes in here, mostly. Co-streaming comes in around the 2020-21. That's when co-streaming starts to blow up. Or not blow up, like starts to start. And then React content is at its peak at 2020 as well, 2021. So it like kind of hit together.
adding a lot of value.
Anyway,
Can you show me the metrics in which any of those esports are profitable? Because
Profitable may have been the wrong word, but it's actually very good for it in the end. Tarek, I'm trying.
But this is what I talked about, right? Making it profitable is one thing, but it's just based... If you want to make an esports profitable, then you have to follow a standard sports model of like a subscription-based model or some shit. Like that's just how it's gotta go, I think. Otherwise, you're just fucking bleeding. But you will earn your money from exposure, and this exposure will buy you more in-game products, and the in-game products being bought will get you more money. That's just
Trying to think of the optic guy from
so
I'll stop you.
Scump.
Anyway,
you also have people in Valorant as well. They're huge co-streamers that are bringing an influx of people that are helping the scene overall.
how are they helping the scene?
They're
What is your
bringing
metrics
more
for this?
exposure to it.
Okay, so
What are
if
your
you
metrics for it?
I'm saying that when League of Legends had the best broadcast talent on the mainstream, the numbers on the mainstream were higher. And I believe, because as someone that has sold League of Legends sponsorship in the past, that having a really high number on your mainstream makes it very easy for you to be able to take it to sponsors and be able to package up a
But Riot
product.
just includes the co-streamers and everything.
Yeah,
don't
and
they?
then you have to show them. And as I said, I just don't think that I don't think anyone can say that.
So if you
having
have 200,000 people,
hang on a second,
hold
let
on,
me
if you have
finish my point.
200,000 people
Yeah.
watching Tarek and
Yeah.
like over 500,000 people watching the Valorant stream, you don't think that's a problem? You think that's a problem?
I think that's a massive problem. Because you have absolutely no way to police a language that Tarek uses. You have no way to police Tarek's brand. There's no way that you can actually use Tarek to do anything in between games. Like, he's not going to be on any of your commercials. Like, it's not a surprise that when you watch LEC and they do a Kit Kat ad.
a couple of those things like are like it doesn't even matter. Like you can police anyone. Your Riot Games, like if Dom got banned before, right? That's just how it goes.
We all agree that Caedrel is more popular than Vedius, right? But Vedius is the people doing the ad because they don't have access to Caedrel as broadcast talent.
They do have access to Caedrel for KitKat ads. I did a Marriott Bonvoy I did a Marriott Bonvoy ad. You'll remember, chat. The Marriott Bonvoy last summer had me in their LEC ad. They have absolute full access.
This is an issue.
It's not an issue though.
Why is that not an issue?
You're just bringing in way more people to the scene. And you're also getting so many more eyes on sponsorships.
What's the purpose of bringing in people to the scene? Is to be able to monetize sponsorship.
But you're monetizing with over 500,000 people on Tarek or Dom or LS or any of these key streamers.
I don't
you
think
are.
you have any metric.
So,
hang on a second.
you don't have any. Do you,
I actually.
But your price tag is higher than Vedius's. But would that change regardless of being a co-streamer or not? If I was like a streamer by myself? Isn't that what I talked about? The range of like casting and influencer and exposure and shit like that? Also, Vedius is a small different example because he's part of Riot.
have got metrics. I just told you 3 metrics.
no,
being
you
able
told
to
me.
use it.
Can we fact check these?
What? That they can't use Caedrel for ads? 100%. You can ask if they can use it.
You can add value by having these co-streamers. You add value all the time.
I think there's a lot of white flags up. Or do you want me to keep going?
I just said it, but I don't want to interrupt, but it's good.
Can you 1v1 him? Bro, I'm not here to 1v1. Maybe it's because of like the people's arguments, but everyone seems a bit heated in these arguments. I see it like a lot different. I'm here to chill and like talk about it if anyone wants to talk about it.
I think top to bottom, this is a really hard point for me to agree with you on. I think the primary benefit to co-streaming is I do agree that it does increase viewership. It gives you the opportunity to personalize your fandom or viewing experience, right? So I'm someone who's very competitive. I want to learn more about the game. So watching someone who's had professional experience, whether that's Caedrel or whoever it may be, or like versus some of my friends who are much more like spirited and want to watch high energy people, or someone that brings in a different flavor to the broadcast that doesn't exist in its organic state. I don't see a way that is a negative to the broadcast experience. I think the last thing I'll include before you respond is that you mentioned there's no way to police co-streamers. I mean, we have a co-streamer literally in our midst. That's not true. I mean, they're called co-streaming rights. So Riot can absolutely police the co-streamers in certain ways, to an extent. It's a privilege to be able to co-stream, and I think that is a relationship that is mutually beneficial to the creators, to the fans, and also to Riot.
So what I will say is, in the ideal world, Riot would hold more power in this relationship and therefore be effective police officers. However, unfortunately, we have a lot of now very big co-streamers that have such fandom that if you actually don't include them in broadcast, regardless of past behavior, you are going to have a huge public outcry. And I think that Riot has actually created a big rod for their own back, that they actually have to be able to allow some of these people to co-stream their product.
I mean, you're spamming question marks, Chad, but basically what he's saying is like, if I wasn't giving co-streaming for Worlds, for example, I think people would be unhappy about it, right? I'd be unhappy. I think some viewers would be unhappy that I don't have it, right? That's kind of what he's saying. Valid. I think that just comes from a place of trust and like a place of, I don't know what the wording is. Obviously, if someone goes on stream as a co-streamer and is very popular and is like racist, and Riot says, hey, you're not co-streaming no more, people would get it, right? That's basically what the argument is. If someone was like blatantly fucking doing something wrong in the world or being like complete dick, and I think that's where the contracts come in between. You have a contract between co-streamer and Riot, and I don't think Riot would ever turn around to BB and just randomly go, hey, Caedrel, we're just gonna fucking not let you co-stream anymore. I don't think they do that. But obviously, if I did something with this contract, right? If I did something fucking stupid, then of course they would ban me from co-streaming, right?
Regardless of behavior. And what I will say is, I think that when people think about behavior, they think about me saying like, oh, they're going to say racist or sexist or bad things on social media. Like, these people are professionals, they're not going to do this. But at the end of the day, if something is good for their co-stream or good for the broadcast, their job as a co-streamer is to do what is good for the co-stream, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that means that monetization is not going to be as effective. So I'm not saying a co-streamer is worth $0. I'm saying that a co-streamer is not worth $1 whole for a viewer per viewer, because when you're on a broadcast, as someone that was on a broadcast for 8 years, your whole responsibility is to make the broadcast the best product available. And that's no longer what happens with Riot Games products. You have a whole bunch of people that have majority of the viewership now. It's not even like it's like 50% of the viewership, it's like 70% of the viewership is controlled by co-streamers now, and their best interest isn't in making the Riot Games broadcast better. And if people think that that actually doesn't hurt monetization, people are morons. In saying, is it a more enjoyable broadcast experience? Absolutely. The fact that you can choose from multiple people to be able to watch obviously means that broadcasting experience is going to be more enjoyable. But what I would say is you can get a lot of that experience and enjoyment back by putting the S-tier talent back on the main broadcast. I think that the best people within League of Legends...
That's a fairy tale. That
I don't think it is.
Money-wise, Riot is never going to be able to match the amount of money that a co-streamer will make.
They can. Do you know how? They go back in time and they never allow...
I feel like the whole S-tier talent versus like personable co-streamer thing is like a very... Like, you can bring back all the S-tier talents, but then you get into the world of like, how much are casters worth? What's the caster value to Riot? How much does Riot pay casters? Then you get into like the whole thing of like caster, like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to like the NBA and shit, sure, you can't co-stream or whatever, or like sports, they must pay these people like millions of dollars. That opens up a whole new world of like S-tier casters. The broadcast is so tied to casters that instead of the co-streamers having Riot, you know, with the viewership, if 3 casters decide, hey, what if we all just like came together and did this or whatever and made them pay us this much or whatever, then they still have the exact same chokehold in the same kind of sense. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So like, if co-streamers are out of line or they do this or they do that or whatever, and it pisses off Riot, versus if casters were the only thing that really mattered to the broadcast and were the face of the broadcast and they did this or that, it's the same kind of like problem you run into, I suppose. The only difference is the casters would be paid. I don't know what they would be paid, because I don't know what brand value is. I guess you could like unionize a bit or whatever, and I don't know what the NBA looks like or normal sports. At this point I'm just like yapping, but I don't understand what his argument is. His argument is if all the S-tier casters were on the broadcast would have more viewers. Is that what he's saying? I don't understand the argument.
Best product available. And that's no longer what happens with Riot Games products. You have a
Yes.
whole bunch of people that have majority of the viewership now. It's not even like, it's like,
But I don't understand that argument. Obviously, if all the best casters were on the product and if you got rid of co-streaming and all of the S-tier thingies were on the product, then the main broadcast viewership would go up, obviously. But it wouldn't go up relative to how much it was before. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and remove co-streaming and add all of the S-tier casters back onto the broadcast, what would the broadcast numbers be? Would they be higher than they were yesterday when co-streaming existed? No, I don't think so. I don't think they would be nearly as high. Because that's just not how the internet like world works of viewing things these days. And I already went through that a lot. Like, it's just an outdated way of watching things. I don't know how to describe it. I feel like every esport is trended towards the React content version. Would it be like a more stable long-term thing? I don't know, because then the whole dynamic shifts away, right? Right now we're talking about co-streamers and putting S-tier talent back on the broadcast. Okay, now the S-tier talent's back on the broadcast. Now we have to figure out like how does the talent interact with the broadcast being the faces, and like how important are the talent to like growing the product. And then you go down this whole other rabbit hole of like how much are casters paid? How much like if I asked you right now, okay, this is the best way to describe it. How much is a caster worth, right? Are you worth your brand size? Are you worth your skill set? Okay, who manages that skill set? Okay, so your skill set's good, but your brand size is low. Does that mean you're more expensive than someone who's a worse caster with higher brands? And then if you go down, then you're going down this whole rabbit hole of like how much value the casters bring, what's an S-tier caster, and then, yeah. I disagree. I think that I think he's right though. I think for sure he's right. If you have S+ tier talent and co-streams are gone, then main broadcast viewership will go up. Sure, like if you went back in time, sure, it's good. But I think co-streaming as a whole has lifted it to a higher level. The best way to describe it after all this yapping is I think co-streaming has increased viewership overall, but has decreased... what's the word? Grip of things, I guess. I don't know what the word is. And that reason that there's a decrease in grip on the product from Riot is because the bridge hasn't been found on how to perfect co-streaming versus making a product that can like self-sustain.
like 50% of the viewership. It's like 70% of the viewership
Anyway, I started yapping before a lot.
is controlled by co-streamers now, and their best interest isn't in making the Riot Games broadcast better. And if people think that that actually doesn't hurt monetization, people are morons. In saying, is it a more enjoyable
like my
broadcast
grip of things?
experience?
Okay, dude.
Absolutely. The fact that you
Okay,
can
right,
choose
yes.
from multiple people to be able to watch obviously
That's true.
means that broadcasting experience is going to be more enjoyable. But what I would say is you can get a lot of that experience and enjoyment back by putting the S-tier talent back on the main broadcast. I think that the best people within League of Legends...
that's a fairy tale. That
I don't think it is.
money-wise, Riot is never going to be able to match the amount of money that a co-streamer will make.
They can. Do you know how? They go back in time and they never allow them to co-stream the games in the first place. So they would have earned $0 versus earning a salary. Because you know what? Randomly, you can't pick up an NBA game and start co-streaming it. That's not how the real world works.
Of course.
You don't own the broadcast, so you don't get to do it. So it's actually Caedrel would earn $0 or Caedrel would earn $300,000.
I mean, again,
As opposed to
Jesus, man. Whoa.
$300,000 to now the millions of dollars he makes.
I am not going to sit here and tell you that Riot Games has not made mistakes in how they've managed this relationship.
Like, if you could... okay, I'll just address that one thing. If Riot could go back in time and not open co-streaming... If Riot went back in time... When did they open co-streaming? 2020? 2021? I'm still like, I still think, okay, the way the world works, okay, now you can call me crazy. Let's say they never allowed co-streaming. I think League viewership was on a decline already after COVID, and it would continue to decline. And eventually they would just allow co-streaming to bring it back up to the top. It's just they came in a bit early. And you know how they came in a bit early? They used Valorant as an example to see if it would work. And I think that Riot overcorrected with Valorant. I think they went crazy with Valorant. Whereas League was like an established product when they did it. Like, they built Valorant on influencers. That was their whole goal. How much can we make a game out of pure influencers, right? Like, that's it. Whereas League itself had like something to stand on. The problem is, League had already been around before Valorant was around for 10 years. And it was already on its like decline, right? And I think co-streaming brought this new generation of like young, fresh eyes of interest because of Twitch streaming and React content. And that's it. That's just the simple answer. You can bring back all the S-tier broadcast talent. You can have the best possible casters, and you can have removed co-streaming. I still think the way the game was going and the way the broadcast was going was on a downward trend, and something would have to change no matter what. And that's something, and the best timing was React content, aka co-streaming, and that boomed it back up. The problem you have, okay, now I'm not gonna lie, you haven't fixed the wound, you're still bleeding. Like, that's not gonna fix it forever, but that's just how games go. Games come and they go. And that's it. How long can you hold it? Until it disappears. And there's many ways you can boon them back up. Co-streaming's a good one for viewership. How could you revive League of Legends in 5 years from now when it's all tanking? Well, you could follow other formulas that games have done. You could make League of Legends 2, and then people will come back. And again, people will be back for a while, but they will not be there forever. And that's just reality things. People grow up, people move on, and things just change. And so, on that decline of viewership with all this S-tier talent and all that stuff, it's not like this was going to stay stable forever. It wasn't even stable in the first place. Things were on like a downward trend, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But you need to find ways to keep things alive. And I think the time and the place for co-streaming was pretty good. And I would say it's worked out pretty well. It's just like I said, that bridge between financial gain and co-streamers just isn't there yet. And I think Riot has to find the bridge that makes sense.
Okay, but however, I do think that there are ways that they can fix or improve it from where we are currently. I still think that there's a lot of ways that you can incorporate. Like, I work in the creator space, right? And so I am a big believer that influencers and creators are one of the, if not the best way to market yourself in today's day and age. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and argue against that.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of ways that Riot could continue to improve the relationship that they have with the creators and the way that co-streaming is used as a tool, but it is a net positive in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think that we're in a situation now where Riot have to make it a net positive because otherwise the ecosystem is absolutely cooked. But I think that even if you ask the people at Riot if they could put Pandora back in the box, majority of people are putting that box closed instantly.
I think that would be a mistake. I mean, we don't have to run in circles,
Yeah.
but
They would close that box, I think, for a year, and then they'd go, actually, fuck it, let's open it.
yeah.
My opinion.
Hi.
Hello.
What did someone say in chat? But there's loads of different ways you can be creative with like monetizing things, man. Like even you might remember this, chat. Even old school Twitch, maybe you remember this. Old school Twitch, you had the Twitch screen here, you had the chat here, and then sometimes if you had a partner or an ad, the ad would be here around the fucking box. You remember that? There's so many. You can have in-game monetization through fucking influencers. You just gotta find that bridge, man. You just gotta find that bridge.
Hello, how are you?
I'm Reagan, Miss
Very
Chim Chim, co-streamer. Basically, you're thinking of monetization only in the form of running ads?
No, I'm thinking of monetization and the ability to be able to attract sponsors to a brand.
Okay. What about in the form of like selling seats at a venue at Worlds, MSI? I have a different type of viewership. Like I got the girls, the gays, the theys, right?
Yeah.
this is all viewership that was probably not going to be watching the broadcast in the first place, but now they're coming out to MSI Worlds. I had people fly over to Europe last year for Worlds just to see the games. They're so ecstatic now watching these pro players after watching the co-stream with me. I have organizations like Gen G reaching out. They want to collab, do videos together, because sometimes the co-streamers offer a different type of value that is brought into the ecosystem outside of just ads and sponsors. There's other ways to make money through that.
So first of all, really cool that you're able to have those opportunities and you're able to bring a new audience to League of Legends. And I think that if more co-streamers, like what I would say is if majority of co-streamers bought a new audience, then I think I would be much more pro co-streaming. However, I don't think that what you do speaks to...
That's what Riot tried, though. Quick thing. That take of like, well, why don't we just give co-streaming to people that aren't in the league scene to attract more league viewers? They did that. They did that at Worlds 22 because I remember I was casting it. I saw loads of NA influencers co-streaming Worlds finals. None of them like watched League much or were part of League or anything like that. And I think they thought, fuck this, let's just move on. I don't know what happened, but that stopped right there. It just stopped. So they tried that. I don't want to say it's a failure, but they tried to involve other audiences, but it didn't work.
To what the majority of League of Legends co-streamers do. And so what I'll say is that...
So people have this idea of like, we need to bring in new audiences, but they also fail to realize that like the current audience is also, like the current League viewers, LoL viewers are also kind of done, bro. Like you can say you need to bring in more audience, but like I feel like co-streaming has revived this part of the viewership. This part of the OG League viewers and shit like that, they're kind of fucking, bro, they were kind of fucking, they were running out, man.
On top of what I'm going to say, whilst it's amazing to bring new people into the broadcast, the majority of the broadcast actually doesn't monetize off bringing people to Worlds, bringing people to MSI. That's like the icing on the cake. The majority of the broadcast, at least when I was involved in broadcast, is through the sponsors that you're able to bring in for your main broadcast and through the ads that you're able to sell on that main broadcast.
True.
And I think that that's where co-streamers actually hurt. So and the other point I would raise is, do you think as a co-streamer that is able to bring in a more diverse group of people, that if you were able to do things that surrounded the broadcast as opposed to directly providing commentary on the game and then participate in the main broadcast, that you still wouldn't be able to attract your...
Like NLC is a good example. Like I streamed, a quick thing, I streamed the EMEA Masters. Everyone was requested to have a Kit Kat ad on their screen. Okay, we put a Kit Kat on our screen. So like the bridge is being built slowly.
Audience and the great people to these events? Like, do you think that co-streaming the games itself as opposed to being able to be provided opportunities by Riot Games actually hurts your ability to be able to bring these people in?
I do not think it hurts my ability. I've been on LCS broadcasts when it was LCS.
Yep.
I've co-streamed at Worlds and whatnot. And whether I'm being paid or not paid, me being there brings in all of these new people.
Yep.
It would be so amazing if like just all of these people off of TikTok, off of all of these other streaming platforms, off of all of these other creators would just watch LCS or watch Worlds, but they just don't know of it. So it's just a different outlet. I don't know how much information I can give.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. And I think that in the ideal world, what you're saying is actually the path for it, right? Which is what they discover you, they discover that you have a love for League of Legends, and then somehow Riot Games makes that sticky to League of Legends as a product. And in the ideal world, if I was someone that was selling sponsorship by Riot, I would love to take your audience and then be able to give it to my primary broadcast. Now, my gut feeling of what happens is your audience loves you, a portion of your audience then finds out you love League of Legends, and now they love to interact with you around League of Legends. I actually don't know how much of that transfers to the main broadcast. Now, you obviously have information that I don't have on that, and maybe we can't talk about it, but that's just my gut feeling is that, and not enough of that stickiness is actually hitting.
That's fair.
My gut feeling is when Caedrel streams the LCS, 80,000 of Caedrel's fans watch the LCS, and then when Caedrel turns off his stream because it's a bad game, 80,000 people don't join the LCS broadcast channel, 10,000 people join the LCS broadcast channel, and 70,000 people go to bed with Caedrel.
That's actually not true. When I did the LCS, I hosted the LCS every time I ended my stream. That is fucking wrong.
And I think that's terrible.
But how often does that happen?
Very often with Caedrel, actually. He might tune in for a Team Liquid or
Bro, I don't even watch the LCS anymore. What is happening? How am I being fucking singled out here? I watched the LCS playoffs last year, and then I hosted every time I ended. That's it. That's it. What the fuck?
a FlyQuest game, and then he'll be like, Dig is playing against Immortals. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Okay. I can't.
Hey, okay, fuck this shit, I'm out,
handle that.
because it's 2 a.m. I'll host the stream, I'm out, peace. If you want to watch, check it out. That's what I do.
I do love what you do.
Oh, thank
So
you.
keep doing it.
I love your pep
Bro, I got fucking, bro, I got cooked. I got cooked a bit today, huh? What the fuck? Are we done? We're done.
talks.
I got cooked a bit. Anyway, I went through it. I appreciate everyone who tunes into the co-stream. I appreciate everyone who likes the co-stream. I hope I can keep co-streaming for you all. But yeah, I don't watch the LCS anymore. But I guess the argument would be like, if I did co-stream the LCS, how many viewers would I bring back to the LCS? That's a good case study, right? If I do co-stream the LCS, if I don't co-stream the LCS, how good does it get? How bad does it get? I don't know. But I don't watch the LCS no more. It starts too late at night. But they did change the times. But I'm not gonna watch it. But this is where, like, also, like, I agree with, like, the fact that if co-streamers are really popular and they're just really, like, fucking horrible people, that it can go very badly. Like, that is very realistic. Because the power shifts from Riot having all the viewers to, like, the co-streamer. So obviously there is a degree of, like, but that would come no matter what the influencer, right? Like, if there's a fucking influencer who's really popular and says some shit about some shit, then obviously that's not going to go down well. But I feel like if people are just complete assholes intentionally, then obviously you got a problem. But I'm glad that I could revive a lot of people to watch League again. Anyway, we'll do our thing. People will do their thing. We'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. Everyone will do their own thing one day. And in 50 years, we'll be fucking in our wheelchairs talking about it. In our fucking rocking chairs talking about what happened and how it went down, bro. Whatever it is, we'll enjoy the games for now. Enjoy the fucking League of Legends. And if League dies in 5 years, then maybe maybe they'll find a way to revive it, because the same thing will happen. Maybe we can introduce co-streaming co-streams. Can we do that? What if people just started co-streaming my co-stream? Then it's like, it's the same thing though.